Alright, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us for this presentation. Let's make a start. How many of you drive regularly? Could you please raise your hands? And how many of you drove here today? Thanks, you can put them down now. Now I'd like all of you to close your eyes and imagine that you're driving. Let's say you can open your eyes now. You're driving to work or university. And just stopping at the lights, minding your own business. Did that accident need to happen? Well, no. It was caused by inexperience. Mark Twain said, good judgment comes from experience, but experience comes from bad judgment. And the P-plater driving the blue ute learned a memorable lesson that day because of their bad judgment. The sad thing, though, is that on the road, bad judgment can be fatal. This graph shows the number of Victorian drivers involved in a crash compared to how much driving experience they have. The yellow section shows the crash rate for learner permit holders, and you can see it's quite low. The red section is for red P-platers with up to 1 year of licensed driving. The green section shows drivers in years 2, 3, and 4 of their driving career. Look at that peak as they transition from L's to P's. This graph says that the instant a young person gets their license and is allowed to be on the road unsupervised, they're suddenly about 30 times more likely to be involved in a crash that will injure or kill someone. Here we see the view from the cabin of a truck heading outbound on the Princess Freeway, somewhere near Point Cook. See if you can pick out who the inexperienced driver is. So what's the difference between people on their L's and people in their P's? Well, we believe the biggest difference between L-platers and P-platers is the parent or the instructor that learners must have sitting next to them. So let me introduce you then to DriveAid. DriveAid is a smartphone app. DriveAid helps novice drivers survive when they're on the road alone. DriveAid has two primary functions: coaching and monitoring. Coaching is what happens when you're still a learner permit holder and your parents help you through the trickier parts of driving, those that you haven't quite mastered yet. It keeps a constant eye on how you drive and gives you tips on how to improve, either in real time or after you've arrived and you want to play back the trip to identify those improvement areas. Monitoring is for peace of mind. It ensures that the young driver is always within reach of their parents through real-time GPS tracking. It also reduces the temptation to take risks like skidding around a corner. Using a connection to vehicle sensors, DriveAid identifies how a vehicle is being driven, tracking things like speed, engine RPM, throttle, G-forces, steering inputs, and can alert a parent in real time if the driver is being reckless or maybe just having to make an emergency stop. So as you can see, DriveAid aims to bring the novice driver back to the yellow area through coaching and monitoring similar to those experienced by L-platers. The risk of injury is also lowered. In many ways, the concepts used by DriveAid are not new. The fleet management market has had similar goals of monitoring and coaching for decades. A mature product in this segment is Scania Optimize. Scania Optimize uses a network of sensors built into every new Scania vehicle to track and provide feedback on how it's driven. They pair this with a formal driver training program that transport operators can pay to join. Scania claim that the resulting fuel savings alone can pay for the cost of the program, and that's before you count crash savings and reduction in maintenance costs that come with the better driving habits. The downside to Scania Optimize is that it's only available on new Scania vehicles, and with some buses and trucks in service for as long as 25 years, it's just too slow to adopt. DriveAid will be a universal platform that is brand agnostic and therefore easily adopted by large and mixed fleets. Also targeted at bus and truck fleets, Vigil Vanguard is a camera-based driver training platform. It uses a 4-camera system that's attached to the truck or the bus, and then this is used for driver assessments and feedback. You can see how it records the driver's actions and their position on the road. However, this system requires the trainer to be in the vehicle, actively assessing and training the driver, so it's not suitable for constant monitoring of many drivers. Vigil doesn't rely on machine analytics of the video streams at all, only using the recordings during a driver debrief to point out where he went wrong. Australian insurance company AAMI has a free Safe Driver app that scores how you drive. Using just a GPS and accelerometer sensors in the phone, it'll measure the trip length, speed, acceleration, braking, rest periods, and phone usage to give you a score out of 100. The basic concept's actually quite similar to DriveAid, but just doesn't go as far as what we're proposing. Also, all the feedback you get is, it's just a number out of 100. So, while that's good for bragging rights, it doesn't really tell you where you need to improve, nor does it have any monitoring functions for the parent. An app that tries to take on the task of integrating sensor data is Karoo Pro for Android. It's a dashcam app that also listens to Bluetooth OBD2 readers. OBD stands for Onboard Diagnostics. It's an automotive industry standard that's present in all cars built in the last 20 years or so. OBD gives you things like speed, engine RPM, throttle position, temperatures, pressures, fuel consumption. In some cars even shows the steering angle and whether the indicators are on. Karoo Pro overlays OBD data over the forward camera video to give you more information and also to alert the driver to any faults in the vehicle. Again, Karoo doesn't quite go as far as DriveAid, lacking the live parental monitoring and coaching functions, which then brings us to Waze and Glimpse. Now these are apps that can be used for tracking of friends and family. Waze is more geared towards in-car use, as it's primarily a navigation, what they call community-based driving app. Glimpse, however, focuses exclusively on location sharing without tying you down to the driving context, so you can just use it about anywhere on the train or jogging. More importantly, Glimpse features an open developer platform with APIs and SDKs easily accessible. So as we seek to develop DriveAid without reinventing the wheel, they might just prove to be valuable partners in the delivery of our value proposition. So we've seen similar sorts of products that are already on the market. But how then does DriveAid work? How is it better? How can it deliver on its promise to coach and monitor? Well, here's the system block diagram for DriveAid, where you can see the components on the left that enable DriveAid's capabilities. It's a bit small and hard to read, so I'll focus first on the top part, which describes the physical hardware in the vehicle and the mobile device, and then outline the cloud-based backend and connectivity that's required by the monitoring function. So within the smartphone app, which is shown within the smaller green rectangle, you can see a bunch of circles, which are the sensors on the mobile device. We have a Bluetooth hands-free trigger that tells DriveAid we're now in a car and we're driving, so start coaching and monitoring. Then we have accelerometers and gyroscope that tell DriveAid what sort of motion the vehicle's in, whether it's cornering, traveling uphill, downhill, over bumps. The middle circles interface to the vehicle sensor network, which can be a generic OBD2 adapter that plugs into the car's diagnostics port. Depending on how fancy the car is, there may be scope to use the car sensors in addition to sensors on the mobile device, but I'll talk more about this later. Location, heading and speed are next, and this information is fed into both coaching and monitoring functions. Finally, camera footage is used for the dashcam functionality and can also be used to verify readings from the other sensors. Selected data from both coaching and monitoring modules is then sent over 4G or public Wi-Fi into DriveAid's cloud platform. This backend supports the parent version of the app and holds a database of user accounts, scoring records, and usage logs. And that's about as technical as I plan to get today, so you can wake up again as I move on to who would use DriveAid. Well, those of you who know that DriveAid is targeted at novice drivers and their parents. Specifically, DriveAid will be used by novice drivers, but recommended or in some cases mandated by their parents who worry about the safety of their children. Aside from parents looking out for their kids, there are many different customer segments that could be potential targets for DriveAid. Road safety is a universal concern, and parents aren't the only people worried about road safety, so let's look at a few other markets to explore once we gain some traction. Ride-sharing platforms like Uber are growing fast. Uber gains trust using their driver rating system. But what does a star rating really mean? Well, I think it's a condensed version of how you, the passenger, interpreted the trip in terms of safety, comfort, timeliness, whether the driver was nice to you. The rating is subjective. It's skewed by your preferences and emotional state, things that have really nothing to do with the driver. DriveAid takes out the subjectivity and focuses on the safety. So as a rideshare user, you can see a safety star rating and know that you're getting into a car that's driven by a safe driver. You might ask, why don't we target this segment initially? Good question. I think because there isn't demand for it right now, but it only takes a few stories of a reckless Uber driver who kills someone to go viral on social media, and the demand will suddenly appear. So at this point, I recommend developing a strategy for this to happen one day, but let's stick with the parent target market for now. A list of users who could benefit from using DriveAid is virtually anyone who drives, so the entire transport industry plus all commuters. However, I'd like to single out car share programs in the vehicle insurance industry. In both cases, the businesses have an interest in minimizing risk to protect their assets. Now, because DriveAid continuously monitors how you drive, insurers can give you a greater incentive to drive safely by rewarding you with money in the form of premium rebates when you've driven very safely over a period of time. Car shares can also see how their customers are driving and encourage or discourage drivers using the service by accurately pricing in their crash risk into the fees that they charge. Finally, the big one is law enforcement. Now, assuming we can get the tech to work reliably enough for courts to trust it, there's scope to privatize traffic law enforcement and possibly even make it fairer in the process. Now, this is going to be a massive Pandora's box and quite well outside the scope here, so if you're interested, come talk to me after the presentation. But for now, I'm going to move on to customer channels. Being a smartphone app, at least initially, the most obvious distribution channels would be the respective app stores of Google and Apple, maybe Microsoft. There's also third-party app stores like Amazon App Store and the Firefox Marketplace. So I've spoken at length about the problem that we're trying to solve, who we're trying to solve it for. Now we're going to reach them. Now let's look at the resources we need to have and the activities we need to do to make DriveAid a reality. A market scan found a number of apps and platforms that are bits and pieces of the overall vision of DriveAid. Dashcam apps, location tracking apps, driver scoring apps. Therefore, we recommend a development either occur in-house or through a closely guarded partnership with a software developer. However, this does not mean that we need to build everything ourselves. As you would have seen from the system block diagram, there's quite a few subsystems developed by others that could be leveraged to improve our app. For instance, here, the mapping company, that used to be called Navtech and Nokia Maps, and have recently been bought by a consortium of German car brands, and are developing a vehicle sensor network that will aggregate feeds from various in-car sensors. And they're planning to turn this into an industry standard and make it accessible to third-party developers. So what this means for DriveAid is that we could use data from onboard radar, cameras, parking sensors, read into our coaching module, giving us better data to work with. It's basically taking the self-driving technology but leaving the control with the human driver and using the machine, which knows how to drive but we don't trust, to be the always present coach for the novice driver. So then, rather than development, one of the key activities will be engaging with a company like here and any other participants in that automotive space so we can leverage their R&D to make our product better. There's a whole bunch of key relationships that would be critical to the success of DriveAid. And we see them grouped in three broad areas: development, promotional, and regulatory. In the early stage of the platform, most of the development efforts will be undertaken in-house. Partnering with here will give us a key competitive advantage, and then we could leverage their vehicle sensor networks. Leveraging these sensors will allow us to have better sensor data, which leads to better inputs into the driver's skills analysis and analytics, which means we have better and more robust driver coaching platform. After all, the sensors on board a smartphone can be limited by other factors, such as the rigidity of the mounting or the quality of the camera, or the accuracy of the positioning chipset. So we see this as a critical partnership if we're going to rise above other apps playing in this space. Even so, I don't think this is a competitive advantage can be sustained in the long run, as here have demonstrated a very open approach to their platforms, so we might see some followers very soon. Concurrently, we also need to partner with trusted organizations who can evaluate and endorse DriveAid. Government bodies such as the TAC would be keen to look at innovative approaches to reduce the young driver road toll, and might even be willing to provide some funding. Other players such as Vic Roads, Vic Police, and the Education Department might like to see what we're doing and provide some direction as well. Now, in terms of promotional relationships, again, the TAC and Vic Roads are key stakeholders, so I'd expect their ongoing support. We won't limit ourselves to government endorsement, as many other groups also have a road safety interest. We could approach the RACV, the Victorian Transport Association, and the Driver Trainers Association, and test how willing they are to engage and partner with us in our mission to reduce the young driver road toll. And I reckon they'll get on board, because it's not just about our product, but our cause. Now, one critical engagement that we have to get right is to obtain an exemption from or find a loophole through the existing Road Rule 300 Section 1A. This rule bans P-platers from any form of mobile phone use, regardless of purpose. So sadly, the current regulations mean that although DriveAid assists the driver to become safer because it's a phone app, it's unfortunately being caught up in this legislation. So in this case, the key relationship to pursue would be the Victorian Parliament, the road safety stakeholders. We could also leverage the media to win a bit of influence in our favour. You gotta love politics. So now to the part that all of you investors are just waiting to hear. How is this app going to make us some money? Well, our initial efforts will be aimed at maximizing traction in the marketplace, since there are a number of other apps out there that sound like they do the same kind of thing as DriveAid, but just aren't as good. So we're proposing to launch as a freemium model that has a recurring allowance of 100 kilometers per calendar month. If you drive 100 Ks a month or less, you can use all of the features of our app, full version, pro version, no in-app purchases, no apps, for free. However, if you see the value in our app and appreciate the safety benefits we provide on a more regular basis, then you'll need to purchase a subscription, which will be $30 for 6 months with a cheaper rate for longer commitments. TomTom actually uses this exact same model for their Go navigation and traffic information app, and I think it's a great way to let users sample all the benefits that we've invested in developing, while ensuring that only those who really believe in us and actually use DriveAid significantly are asked to pay. Also, because the distance limit resets every month, it reduces the rate of users uninstalling the app. They'll just leave it installed again to use next month. And the freemium model also helps with our corporate social responsibility, as we're providing a benefit to those who don't drive much and therefore don't see a strong personal value proposition, but arguably are the ones who need DriveAid more because they have so little practice. On initial launch, we'll outline the free and subscription plans available, but I believe in order to get good traction early on, we'll make the app completely free for a period of 6 months. This gets more people trying it out and using it, which will give us some valuable usage data to further refine the app in that time. Telstra Air have taken this model, with even extended the free period to get better traction before they start asking their users to pay. There's also strategies we can use to re-engage lapsed users. Let's say someone's installed the app, used it for the first month, then hit the 100k limit, and then they stop using it because they don't want to pay. We can target re-engagement campaigns at these customers, say offer them 1 month unlimited for free, to try and get them using it again and increase our conversion rate. Longer term, a number of opportunities for further monetization start to appear. And we see this involving in two distinct areas, our data and our platform. To monetize the data, we would need to derive insights from our user base and the data that they generate as they drive. With enough users and time, we can compile datasets of human driver behavior. And better still, with the data from the sensor networks, we can relate the human data to vehicle performance metrics like position on road, kinematics, vehicle condition, and then analyze the human response to different driving scenarios. This then allows us to improve machine predictions of human driving, accelerating the arrival of the machine-driven car. Autonomous vehicles or self-driving cars are a hot topic at the moment, and there's a market for this sort of deep analytical insight. Monetizing our platform banks on the fact that we're one of the first movers to propose integrating driver behavior data on top of vehicle sensor data. DriveAid is designed to be an open platform that integrates vehicle sensor data, driver user interface, mobile digital comms, and analytics capabilities. So we'd be well placed to have other services and applications piggybacking on our APIs and networks to deliver their own outcomes. For example, you could approach a road authority who's considering pay-as-you-drive road pricing and tell them, well, you don't have to pay millions of dollars to install GPS trackers in every vehicle on the road. Just pay us a fraction of the amount and we'll turn on distance travel tracking and give you the data. A saving for them, another revenue stream for us. And that brings me to the end of my presentation, and I'm happy to take any questions in just a little while. Thanks.